Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning into this very long overdue how to play Call the Battle video. So, yeah, it's been, I think, since October since I last posted a video, and in that video, set out with you guys that I was going to completely revamp Call the Battle. I was setting out to change how it's played, change the cards, make them look better, or at least I think they look better, and basically just redo the whole entire game. And it has taken me a while, mostly because I've just kind of been working on it off and on. And I had just started my first year of college, so that was a big change, and there was a lot of work that I was having to do. But, anyways, um, it was one of those things that I feel like it wasn't really good to force yourself to work on it because then it becomes more of a chore than something that I just really enjoy doing. But now that I've gotten to the end and I've got everything worked out, I'm so happy with how everything has turned out, and I'm so excited to be able to share it with you guys. And so another thing that you probably notice is I have changed my YouTube name. I'm no longer Blue Thunder, and I have changed it to Preston Sketches, which is my first name, followed by something that obviously I love to do. And this is something that I thought about doing for a while now, and I wasn't really sure what to change it to or if I should change it at all. And the reason I didn't change it to Call of Battle TCG is because at some point in the future I may be working on something that's no longer just Call of Battle, and I may be working on another game. I may be working on um, more art related stuff and more be going that route. I might be going more of the video game route because that is one of the things that I am studying in college. So I just wanted to really have a freedom for the future in what I put on here. And so that was the decision I made. And don't worry, because right now is I'm focused on Call to Battle, and so that is what we're going to be going over. So let's get right on into this updated how to play Call to Battle. So starting out, we're going to look at the objective, and it says use your army of cards strategy and a little luck to diminish all of your opponent's resilience. And so this is the same objective that was in the last how to play video. So the objective hasn't changed, but how you get to your objective has drastically changed. So the components, we have two players, obviously. Each player has an army of 36 cards, which is just your deck. There is a single die, and you need some sort of currency, either coins or gems or something like that. Basically, just a way to keep track of how much of currency you have. So the types of the types of cards, we have creature, support, and trap, and so those are the same. We have the same elemental typings over there on the side. And the first new thing that you're going to be introduced to is Stellarite, and this is the celestial resource in the Call to Battle universe. And so it's the new Call to Battle currency for the game, and all creatures and some support cards cost Stellarite to be added to the battlefield. And so Stellarite is what you're basically going to need your currency for, and what you're going to be needing to keep up with. And so now an overview of the different types of cards. We have creature cards, and creatures can only be added to a creature slot, and they are your primary way to attack and defend. Creatures can attack once per turn, except for the turn they are added to the battlefield, and that creature slot is going to make a lot more sense once we take an actual look at the battlefield. But now I'm just highlighting like their name, type, HP, the rarity down there says common. And one big thing is the Stellarite cost, which is the blue crystals down at the bottom, and that's how many Stellarite you have to pay to add them to the battlefield. And then some creatures will have attacks, abilities, or as you see there in red, special abilities. And special abilities basically just mean that they're going to be active as long as this creature is on the battlefield. And they just have some really cool effects that really just change up the game and make the games different every single time. And so Spidox here is, instead of a special ability, he has either a regular ability or an attack. And a regular ability can be used in place of a creature's, or that should say a creature's attack for their turn. And so when it came time for Spidox to attack, if instead he wanted to not attack, he could use Web Weave, which is a regular ability, and that could be basically his action for the turn. Next we have support cards, and they are used to support your creatures, and they are added into something called action slots. And support cards can be played basically until you don't have any more action slots remaining for that turn. So that is basically the only limitation on them. And then at the end of your turn, you discard all the supports you played unless they are duration cards. And so Heal Spray here, it is a support and it heals 6 damage from one of your creatures on the battlefield. And this specific support card, along with most of them, does not have a type, which means it doesn't matter where you play it on the battlefield. But if the support card did have a type, you could only play it in an action slot behind a creature of the same type. And I know there are some traps that are in the starter decks that have special types, which means you can only use them with a creature of the same type. And so now we're going to talk a little bit more about what that duration meant. And so here we have Empowerment Totem, and it is a duration card, as you can see by the brackets right here. And so it's really no question as to whether it is or isn't a duration card, and they remain on the battlefield longer than 1 turn. And duration cards are discarded after they have been on the battlefield for their specified amount of time. So if we read Empowerment Totem, it says, choose one of your creatures on the battlefield during this and your next 2 turns. All of that creature's attacks do +4 damage during the turn it's chosen. So if we read during this and your next 2 turns, so that means it'll be on the battlefield a total of 3 of your turns. And then after that 3rd turn it's used, you send it on over to your discard pile. So that's how those work. And next is trap cards. And so traps are played underneath one of your creatures and you put them face down, and they're activated when an enemy creature attacks the creature that the trap is guarding. And then you discard them after they've been activated. And like I said, this specific trap is a poison type, and so you can only play it you can only make it guard a poison type creature. So this is the this is a look at the battlefield here. And so where everything is going to go is going to happen is this 4x4 grid here. And so if we take a look, this is the opponent's side, that is their creatures. These are your creatures in your graveyard. And then these are action slots along with the discard pile over on the side. And so this is just kind of like a little overview of what the battlefield is going to look like. And we're going to go into some examples a little later on of some turns. And so everything's going to make a lot more sense. But I just wanted you to kind of see the battlefield so that you could keep it in mind as we continue to go through this. So the setup for the actual game, both players are going to start with 20 resilience. Both players are going to shuffle their armies, draw 5 cards, and then roll to see who goes first. I mean, you can do higher roll goes first, lower roll goes first. You can flip a coin. It really doesn't matter, but a die is required, so a die is easier to roll. And then at the beginning of a turn, 2 things are going to happen. You're going to gain 2 Stellarite, and you're going to draw a card. And then during that turn, you can play creatures, supports, traps with the Stellarite you have. You can attack enemy creatures with your own creatures. And then if your opponent has no creatures on their side of the battlefield, you can attack them directly. And so what happens when you do that? Well, your opponent is going to lose the amount of resilience equal to the Stellarite cost of the creature that you are using to attack them directly. And there's a whole nother slide on that we can go into. And then basically when you deplete all of your opponent's resilience, you win. So here we're going to take a look at what an opening turn would look like. So for demonstration purposes, let's just say that we got the higher roll, which means we are going to take the first turn. So we're going to draw our 5 cards. So let's just say these are the 5 cards that we got. And then we are going to gain our 2 Stellarite since we got the roll and we are going first. And then we are going to draw our new card. So we got our 2 Stellarite and then we drew Draktul. So we can put those away. And let's say we want to, for our first turn, we want to go ahead and use that Stellarite to add Draktul to the battlefield. So our Stellarite are gone, and so now we have these action slots that we can take up and play different cards. And since this is Draktul's first turn added to the battlefield, he can't attack. And one reason that's important is because obviously on the first turn, your opponent hasn't had a chance to add anything to their side of the battlefield. So if he could attack, you could just go ahead and attack your opponent directly. But it's Draktul's first turn on the battlefield, so he cannot attack. But you can do other things. You can play Scroll of Prophecy, which lets you look at the top 6 cards of your army and then rearrange them in any order. And then we could go ahead and play Withdraw to draw 2 cards. And so then we could just end our turn, send those to the discard pile, and that is the end of our first turn. So next we're going to look at attacking. So each creature can attack once per turn, but there are certain support cards that can be used in place of a creature's attack in an action slot. And then a creature can only attack enemy proximity creatures, which that proximity has a special meaning that will be explained. And it means that creatures, basically, they can only attack what they're actually able to see. So taking a look here at those special support cards that are also attacks, so you can see it is a damage dealing support card, and they can only be added to the battlefield in an action slot behind a creature. So when we were looking at the battlefield, I don't know if you noticed, but the Scroll of Prophecy is added behind, or is added in an action slot where there's no creature in front of it, which is totally fine because it doesn't have a type and it's not an attack, which means you don't need a creature to be able to play it. But with Quick Slash here, since it is an attack, you have to use it with a creature, and so it'll then take up that creature's attack for the turn. And you may be wondering, why is this useful? Wouldn't it be better to just have another creature card in your army instead of a support card that can only be played once? Well, it's useful because these support cards are typically higher in damage than regular card attacks, and they're usually cheaper than what regular creatures are going to cost to play. And another thing is, when we were looking at, which creature was it? Spidox earlier, he had a regular ability, and so each creature can use either a special ability or an attack per turn. They can only use one thing that's on their card each turn. And so if Spidox used the special ability instead of his card attack, you could come in with Quick Slash and put Quick Slash in the action slot behind Spidox and be able to use a special ability and an attack in the same turn. So that's another thing where it's useful. So if you want to be able to use abilities and attacks in the same turn. So now we're going to look at a battlefield that's almost filled up, and this would be later in the game. And we're going to take a look at what that proximity meant and what that means for who you can attack. So starting off with Pyronite here, we're going to look at, he can attack Terratoxic, Garden Gnome, or Bile Goblin. And these are the 3 creatures that are in proximity to him. You have both of his diagonals, and then you have the creature directly in front of him. And then if we look at Draktul, his proximity is Garden Gnome, Bile Goblin, and this creature slot had a creature been here. And so you might be saying, okay, well, can Draktul not attack Terratoxic? And the answer to that is no, specifically because Garden Gnome is taking up his diagonal on the left side. And so if Garden Gnome wasn't there, then Draktul would actually be able to see Terratoxic, quote, on C, and would be able to attack him. So what would need to happen is Pyronite could attack Garden Gnome, and let's say Garden Gnome, or Sword Strike actually does 7, which would remove Garden Gnome anyway. So now Garden Gnome is dead, and Pyronite has used his attack for the turn. So now Draktul can attack, and his new proximity becomes either Terratoxic, Bile Goblin, or a creature to his right. So now that lane is open, and for demonstration purposes, we can go ahead and say that Draktul is going to use a quick slash in place of his attack and go ahead and attack Terratoxic. And let's just say Terratoxic's health was low enough in the turn that he actually ended up killing him. And so after the end of your attacking phase, this is what's going to be left on the battlefield. And so hopefully that explained proximity well enough. It's basically a creature's diagonals, what's directly in front of him, and who he can see without someone else being in the way. And so now we're going to talk about winning. So the first person to lose all of their resilience loses the game, deeming the other the winner. And so if this is what the battlefield is looking like in the late game, as you can see up top, the enemy resilience is 3, my resilience is 2, and I have a Death Warden who's on the battlefield. So we can go ahead and take a look at him. And he has, as you can see down here at the bottom, he costs 3 Stellarite to be added to the battlefield. And so if I directly attack my opponents, since they have no creatures to block me, I'm going to be dealing 3 damage directly to them, which means their resilience is going to go from 3 to 0, which means I'm the winner. And so that is how you win. You just basically are going to take out all of their creatures and then attack them directly as often as you can to get their resilience down to 0, and then you have defeated their army and you have won the game. And so that is pretty much it. That's how you play Call to Battle. And like I said, I had a blast playtesting these with my friend, and I actually have yet to win a game in a game that I created, but it's okay because I will have plenty of rematches in the future where I will hopefully win. And hopefully I explained everything well enough in this video, and if there's anything that you have questions about, anything at all, just feel free to leave it down in the comments and I will answer the best I can, because most likely if you have a question about it, somebody else does too, and I probably just didn't do a very good job explaining that specific topic, because I was trying to go kind of fast in this to make it not a ridiculously long video. But yeah, and hopefully, or not hopefully, but I plan on having a much more consistent upload schedule now that I have everything pretty much done for the Call to Battle. I have, I think, a few things to tweak on the Game Crafter for the starter decks, but next Friday, stay tuned because I'm going to be uploading an unboxing for one of the starter decks, and I haven't decided which one I'm going to upload yet, but I will make that decision. And each card that you saw in this how to play video is actually included in the starter deck, so you got to see a preview of some of them in this video. But yeah, that's going to do it for this Call to Battle how to play video, and I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, you do you, and I will see you guys next time.